So the tapes came out today of Hillary Clinton talking to donors, and they've been leaked. And she talked about Bernie Sanders supporters, and she talked about where she is in the political spectrum. And I really think that they've been misinterpreted by both sides. That's why I want to do this live video here in LA. One side says she called the Sanders people basement dwellers, and she hates us, and it was super condescending. The other side said, no, she was just being empathizing with them and trying to understand where they stand. So that's one issue. I actually think that they're both right and they're both wrong, as I'll explain in a minute. And then the other issue is she calls herself center left, center right, and talks about taxes. I actually think that's the more important issue. But let me hit the basement dweller thing first, and we'll have all the audio for you on Monday's show. But in terms of what she said, look, a lot of them are living in their parents' basement. Now, if you just see that out of context, that sounds terrible. Like, this is back in February, by the way. So they're in the heat of the primary here, Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders, when she's saying this to donors. But she does then say, look, it's because they got a college education, but then they had to become a barista, and it's hard to make a living, and that's why they are living with their parents oftentimes, and we've got to do a better job of figuring out how to serve them in a sense. And she says, look, if you're in that bad a shape because of this economy and the situation, well, then you're going to be looking for a revolution. Okay, that part's good. Okay. Now, so am I just on the side of, no, it's perfectly fine? No, I'm not. The reason is, as you read through the whole thing, you still get a sense of some condescension. You do. And I know she's frustrated. She's running against Sanders at the time, and he's giving her a hell of a run. But she has this view of, like, those millions upon millions of Sanders supporters all live in a basement somewhere. They all can't get a job. They're all dissatisfied. It leaves you with the impression that she thinks they don't know what they're talking about. I mean, look, I understand they feel they're in bad shape, but that's why they're being knuckleheaded. Whereas the other way to look at that is not only to empathize with Sanders supporters, but to say, look, here are the parts that they're right about. Now, and if they have frustrations and they want a revolution, the reason they want it is because they think their representatives don't represent them. They think that they represent the moneyed interests. But of course she can't say that, because she's talking to the moneyed interests. She's talking to the donors, which then leads to the second part, which is more important. She talks about in the tapes how, oh, well, you know, he wants a situation where you're not going to just tax people making over $250,000. You're going to tax the middle class, too. By the way, a lot of our donors are in the ballpark of $100,000 to $250,000. So they're not super rich, but they're well off compared to the rest of Americans. So when they hear when she fearmongers and says, oh, he likes the Scandinavian model, and then in the Scandinavian model, well, then you're going to be paying 55% tax. And then the description of the tapes, the audience groans like, oh, no, heaven forfend. And you got to understand, these guys that she's talking to are not conservatives. They're generally good people who are liberals and progressives, but they come from a certain perspective. They come from a perspective of being in the top. I don't know that they're all in the top 1%, probably not, but the top 5%, certainly the top 10%. And from that perspective, well, I want your kids to get a college education. I do. And I want you to have good health care, but I don't want to pay 55% taxes on that. No. So there's bounds of to my decency and liberalism, etc. And in fact, then Hillary Clinton starts to talk about that. She says, well, look, Sanders is unrealistic and he's too far left, and Trump is unrealistic and too far right. And she says, I occupy center left and center right. Now, in the old days when everybody on TV, and still everybody on TV still does it today, tells you moderates are awesome, you should never be too far left or too far right. By that they mean be in the exact middle where the rich still get exactly what they want and we maintain this establishment and status quo. So she says that as a badge of honor because for years and years there's been no internet, and on TV that was seen as the greatest praise you could give yourself. But a lot of the Sanders supporters are actually in the middle of the country, but are considered by Washington to be significantly center-left. So if you ask Americans, they love the public option. Hillary Clinton, during that time in the primaries, was fighting against the public option. So I thought it's unrealistic among the 800 different things that she thought was unrealistic. Americans want higher taxes, certainly on the rich, but if it pays for certain things like education, healthcare, they are in favor of those proposals. So they don't find that to be weirdly center-left, they find it to be mainstream. But Washington finds it, whoa, center-left. So you get a sense when Hillary Clinton is talking to donors, not that they're her bosses, although an argument could be made, she works for the people who pay her, right? And that's what we kept bringing up during the primaries. But even if you don't think that, you've got to understand that this is the bubble she lives in. She's talking to her cohorts, to her colleagues, to the people that she lives and breathes with. And in that world, it's not so bad to be both center-left and center-right. Hey, look at me, I'm in the center of Washington. But that's what this primary was about. A lot of people, millions of people saying, we don't want you to be in the center of Washington. We want you to be a progressive. That's why she had so much trouble in the primaries, even though she had phenomenal name recognition advantage over Bernie Sanders. So I think the tapes actually show you who Hillary Clinton really is. Not because they're secret, like, oh, they were done behind closed doors, but because she was talking to the people she feels most comfortable with. The donor class, the class that she grew up with for decades. A class that, yes, on her side of the spectrum is generally progressive. They're not monstrous right-wingers who want to pollute all the rivers and make an extra buck, but they come from a perspective of, well, we don't want to change the system too much. Oh, 55% taxes. Oh, no. I want to help people. I don't want to help them that much, right? And they don't even really consciously realize that that's what they're saying when they groan about that tax rate. So those are folks who do not want a revolution. So now when you circle all the way back to the first set of comments that Hillary made, there's more truth in them, I think, that she even realizes. So if you're struggling in this economy, even though you did everything right, the part she left out is, and because the system is rigged, where the people who are poor and middle class have to pay the taxes, but some of the richest people don't have to pay any taxes. Some of the corporations don't have to pay any taxes. Where that system is institutionally set against the average American and in favor of the people who've been giving money to the politicians, well then yes, they have a very legitimate grievance, and yes, they would want a revolution. So she got it maybe a quarter of the way there. If you're being generous and you listen to the whole tapes, maybe you say she got half of the way there to understanding them and empathizing with them, but she certainly didn't get all of the way there. And so that's the heart of Hillary Clinton's political problems. Now, in today's current climate, with 30 some odd days left before the election, all the Hillary Clinton supporters will scream, yeah, but she's not as bad as Trump. That's true. That also doesn't make her an angel. And you also have to acknowledge that these problems are real, and that through the election, and certainly after the election, we will continue to fight for the revolution that the American people need. Just because somebody wins or an election is over doesn't mean that our problems are solved. You fight for real change. And the best change would be to make sure that our future politicians are not in a room like that with just donors and giving speeches that appeal to just donors because they're the ones financing them. Let's get the money out of politics, solve the real issues, and bring real change. wolf-pac.com. Go volunteer, go be part of the solution and the answer. And that's an amendment to get money out of politics.